A challenging climate, strange days, unprecedented times. However we choose to describe it, there is no doubt that the coronavirus has brought upheaval and disruption to global society on a level that many of us have never experienced before. While there's much talk of the pandemic being a great leveller due to its holistic impact on day-to-day life, the truth is far more complex, with individuals, businesses and organisations feeling the effects of the coronavirus in a variety of different ways. The new normal aims to give these people an opportunity to tell their stories, assess the potential impacts of the pandemic on their lives and careers, as well as exploring the challenges and opportunities that have arisen from this era-defining situation. Each week, myself, Chris Webb and Helen Armitage from the Careers and Employability Service at Sheffield Hallam University will be joined by a different guest from the world of industry, educational careers, with opportunities for listeners to put their questions forward in advance of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in and joining us as we explore what the new normal means for all of us on a local, national and global scale.
Good morning and welcome to episode 12 of The New Normal. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Helen Armitage. Helen, how are you doing this morning?
Very good, thanks, Chris. Very good. I'd probably say about a 7 out of 10 today, nearly the weekend. So, yeah, all good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I think 7's quite ambitious with the weather we're having at the moment, but that's okay. It's all our own fault for the last episode where we crowed about how good the weather was. So we'll take a bit of stick for that, I'm sure. And we're delighted today to be joined by 3 guests on a special that we're doing in relation to enterprise and business. And it's something that we'll all have seen a lot within reports, things like The Economist, Financial Times, McKinsey Foundation, lots and lots of reports at the moment about how enterprise and innovation is going to be such an important part of the economic recovery. So we thought we'd speak to 3 people very closely involved within this type of work. So I'm pleased, first of all, to say that we're joined by one of our own Sheffield Hallam University colleagues, Graeme Tidd, who's an enterprise advisor at the Hallam iLab. Graeme, very good morning to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Graeme. I'm delighted to say that we're also joined by 2 individuals who've worked quite closely with the Sheffield Hallam Enterprise team, one currently a student and one a former student at Sheffield Hallam. So first of all, we'd like to welcome Harvey Morton. Harvey is the founder and managing director of Harvey Morton Digital. Harvey, very good morning to you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on this podcast today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harvey. Thanks so much for giving up your time to join us. And last but not least, we're joined by Rob Dixon. Rob is a Work For Yourself placement student at Sheffield Hallam University, who runs Rob's All Day selling food at the Sheffield Hallam University campus, or certainly did back when that was open. So, Rob, very good of you to join us. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks. How's it going?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So before we kind of kick off into our main topic and talk a little bit more about the importance of enterprise and how you're all involved with that, we start, as always, with our gloom busters, our good news stories for the week. So, Helen, any good news stories you'd like to share with us this week?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of 2. I think Premier League started back again last night. I'm not a football fan, but for me, that's just sport in general, that it's getting back to some sort of normality. It shows quite a lot of positive progression that we're trying to, get out of this. So that's one thing. But the main thing for me is Marcus Rashford's work this week in the extension of the Free School Meals campaign. I think it's absolutely brilliant that he's been able to use his profile and platform for good in that way, and he's had such a positive impact on the government's U-turn, and that 1.3 million children are going to really benefit throughout the summer and still continue to receive those free school meals. So yeah, brilliant work, Marcus.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really good activism. And yeah, as you say, if Marcus is listening, which I'm sure he is, he'll be very pleased to hear that. So.
I'm sure he is.
And I think, continuing that sporting vein, I guess, another really good news story I saw this week was related to Justin Rose, the former golfing world #1, and his wife, Kate. And they've donated £35,000 of prize money to a kind of 7-tournament series, really, for female professional golfers. This has been backed up by the same £35,000 of prize money from American Golf, the retailer, and all of the courses are given their facilities for free. And this is great. I mean, prior to this, and prior to kind of it being televised on Sky, you were talking about, professionals at the top of their game having to contribute their own prize money, taking the game back years and years. So, I mean, it's really, really great to see that happening. And again, some good news stories from the world of sports, although many more across the piece as well. Do any of our guests have some good news stories that they'd like to share with us at all? Harvey, I'll come to you first, if that's okay.
So, yeah, a good news story that I spotted this week was a window cleaner has cleaned windows of over 800 businesses for free to help them bounce back after coronavirus, which I think is just really nice, and it's good to see businesses supporting each other at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, Harvey. I think it's those kind of little stories which, you know, you might not read in the paper amongst all of the other news that's going on, but yeah, as you say, really, really important thing in terms of how people support each other at this point in time. And Graeme, any good news stories you'd like to share with us at all this week?
Yeah, so my good news story will be closer to home in that this week we are seeing students from our Work for Yourself sandwich year placement presenting. So really good presentations. Students are really strong in their approach, and a lot of successes coming out of that. So all their hard work, we're able to see what they've done over the course of the year. And we're also joined by our new sandwich year students coming through in September. So yeah, a really positive week for that.
Fantastic. Some great good news stories from a variety of different backgrounds. Really, really good to hear.
Okay, so if we just start then by each of our guests telling us how COVID-19 and the lockdown has affected you personally and professionally. Just a brief overview, really. Harvey, I'll come to you first.
So yeah, professionally, you'd think as a freelancer that the impact of lockdown would be small for me working in digital marketing, because I'm used to working from home anyway, and I can work from anywhere online. But at the start of lockdown, the work that I had kind of stopped overnight, and I lost so much of the social media work. Particularly, I had clients dropping off. I think I lost around 5 in a day. That was just before lockdown. So I felt like kind of everything I'd built up had started to crumble so quickly. And it had been like a major test of my freelancing resilience, and certainly one of the toughest I've had. So what I had to do is just, instead of, for the first few weeks really, I was kind of unsure what to do with myself, but I decided to just try and adapt and try and make a brave choice. And I cut the price of all my marketing packages to appeal to businesses that might be struggling. And that's helped me to become busier than I ever have been, really. And it's been really nice. I've been doing a lot more web design, and I feel like I'm helping to kind of secure people's businesses in some way, even though I'm not kind of a key worker. But I do feel like helping people to move online is really rewarding at the minute. So yeah, demand for websites has increased. I've had to adapt with that. And I've not been able to put as much attention to detail into projects. Everything's had to have a quick turnaround, but seeing the feedback I've had from clients has been really rewarding. And then on the personal side, really, I'm sure everyone's found this, but working from home and not having any outings whatsoever, it's like the work-life balance has started to blur for me. So I just feel like I'm always in the same space, and I can never fully switch off because I'm always associating home with work more than ever now.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. The blurred lines between work and home life have completely gone in my eyes. It's you know, it's not a bad thing, but it's something that I'm just more aware of now. There's not that distinction between leaving work and then, you know, going home anymore. But really interesting to hear how your business kind of feel like it went on a bit of a roller coaster, and now it's coming back, and you adapted really quickly and changed your service there to users. So yeah, brilliant. Really shows that you pivoted your business quite quickly there. That's great. Rob, your business is slightly different, so I'm just wondering how personally and professionally COVID-19 and the lockdowns affected yourself.
Yeah, so as a chef in the hospitality industry, COVID-19 stopped both my part-time job and Rob's all day, because I was using the kitchen from my part-time job to cook the boxes that I sell. And since all restaurants, hotels, pubs, everything like that have been shut, I've had nowhere to produce any food, so I can't really sell anything.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a sector, hospitality, travel, they've really taken a hit at the moment, and it's heartbreaking to see. It really is. Have you thought about how you could adapt your business at all?
Oh, like the first few weeks, obviously, I tried to adapt, and I was thinking about trying to prepare the meal boxes from home and how to do that. But I think the amount of new regulations, like in terms of health and safety, that sort of thing, I think there's no go from home. You need a new license. Obviously, I have a license for working at Workley and cooking there, but from home, you can't do it.
Yeah, it's really difficult,
And I think, we're going to talk a little bit later on about the investment side of things. I think it's a really good point you've raised there, that actually for some businesses might be able to adapt, but for others that can't, where does that support come from, and how can, as a country, we support those businesses? So I think it's really, really good points there.
Yeah, definitely. And Graeme, yourself, so personally and professionally, how has COVID-19 and lockdown impacted on you?
So firstly, I've watched everything on Netflix and Amazon Prime, but joking aside, it's been actually very good in the sense that I am used to working from home. In previous roles, I typically worked from home. In my last role, I was based from my home office. So I'm very used to working from home. In terms of engaging with students, I've actually seen a significant increase in student engagement through Zoom, which has been really good. I think it's easier for people to get onto a Zoom chat, and in a way easier for them to access support in some cases, certainly as groups. So Zoom's been really, really good for that. And workshops as well. We haven't missed a beat in terms of the support we give the students. So that's been really, really good. Personally, I'm actually due to launch a business in the next week or so. So I've been running businesses for over 10 years and it's evolved into photography. So as a Photoshop artist and photographer, I'm about to launch a contemporary pet photography business. So it's been good for me in the sense that it's allowed me time to do that, in the sense that I can differentiate my work at Hallam with my personal work, and the day seems to be more structured in that way. So I basically spend my evenings and weekends developing my branding, video, etc., my online presence. So it's been really good, and especially with weekends being stuck at home, I've been able to put a lot of time into that. So both personally and professionally, the lockdown has worked for me. It's worked for me. Strange to say, but it's been good.
No, I think it's interesting to hear how it's affecting everyone in slightly different ways. I mean, myself personally, I don't mind working from home. It's nothing that I've done before, but it's I wouldn't say it's too bad. But I think as a group, we're all experiencing it in very different ways. And yeah, like you say, it's something that we'll come on to and talk in a bit more detail about as we go along. For the first discussion topic, Harvey, I'm going to come to yourself. So you spoke about how you've had to adapt and pivot your business. So, and you've said that kind of demand kind of dropped, but now it's kind of going back up again. I'm just wondering if you've had to upskill as a result of adapting your business.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say I've had to upskill. It's more becoming, I'd say, more efficient in the way that things are done. So finding ways where I can turn around as much content and as many websites as possible. And I've also had to kind of refine my coding skills and try and make myself better at writing more content in shorter amounts of time. So it's been eye-opening, the amount of varied projects I've worked on. It's been far more varied than what I'm used to, but it's also introduced me to lots of new businesses and sectors that I wouldn't usually work with. And I think that after all this coronavirus stuff has passed, I think that the way that I work will change, because I've realised that I can do lots more in a shorter period of time. So it has made me more efficient and made me realise that I don't need to be spending kind of every hour of every day working, because I can find ways to balance it and be efficient. So it's been positive, really.
That's really great to hear and really interesting to hear. And I think, yeah, I was just thinking that as before you were going to say it, that coming out of this, it will change the way you work and, like say, make you more efficient, and hopefully your business will prosper as a result of that. So that's really interesting. Graeme, with the businesses that you work with in the enterprise team, have you been aware of how they've had to pivot and adapt during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges has been motivation. Obviously, it's difficult for people when their movements are restricted, they can't see people. So that's had an impact on motivation. And suppliers as well. A lot of students are unable to effectively contact suppliers. Research of suppliers we are encouraging, but it's difficult when communications sometimes are down or they're not as smooth as they otherwise would be. So motivation's really been hit, but the support that we offer in the enterprise team really helps address that. So we offer one-to-one support. We bring students together so that they can talk to each other about their challenges, their barriers. So we're really trying to break those barriers down and make sure people are making progress. But overall, I've been really pleased with how our students have handled the situation. I think our students are resilient. They're certainly developing resilience in this situation. I think they're learning a lot. And yeah, it's been a challenge, but I've been really, really pleased and really proud of our students to see how they're coping.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to say that, and it's something that I've been made aware of as well, that it's not necessarily the product or the service that they're trying to sell, it's the supply chain that brings that product or service to the forefront and to the shop floor that's the kind of the breakdown, really, and that can happen. But I've no doubt that I think resilience will be a top skill coming out of this for our students and graduates. I know how hard you work in an enterprise team to support students, so it's really great to hear. Thanks.
And Rob, on that front, obviously you mentioned sort of how kind of significantly, I guess, you know, your business and your part-time role have been impacted by what's happened with the pandemic within sort of hospitality and catering. And from that kind of point of view, how have things sort of been for you, you know, since that's happened, and what has kind of been happening with the business, and are there sort of plans afoot for how it might change moving forward, or has it kind of, I suppose, involved a bit more of a recalibration on your part about what's going to happen, you know, with the model and what you're planning to do with it?
Yeah, for me, I've been doing quite a bit of planning. I've been designing posters, been developing new dishes. I want to sort of expand the range of stuff I've been doing. So that's coming quite useful to fill up my time. I've been developing posters to get some more people or young professionals in the local area sort of to know about my business. But I think the demand for my product will have gone up. Due to COVID, I think people will be at home, they'll want something fresh and healthy cooked for them, because some days they might not be bothered to cook or they don't want to cook. But I think, obviously, as I said, I've got no way to sort of supply for that demand.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, again, this leads back to something I think we're going to touch on in a minute about that idea of investment and support. But I think it's interesting to hear, as you said, even though you're in a position where it's very difficult for you to actually physically provide anything, you're still thinking of those ways that potentially you can kind of drum up, I should say, new business moving forward. I'm just going to come back to Graeme really quickly on this. I think it's just an additional point to add on this whole topic, particularly around resilience.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we are really trying to help students focus on sales. We spoke to students about selling online and through other methods as well. And there's a real appetite clearly for students to sell more so than ever now. And students in particular are focused on selling art. A lot of the students that we work with would like to sell art, and also sell through social media, but not least sell themselves as well. So a real focus on selling. I think a lot of people don't focus on selling, certainly like we used to before social media. I think it's easy to have the expectation that it's quite straightforward to sell online, and you can do it through Facebook quite easily, but there's a lot of work involved in selling. So really focusing on converting to sales, that's something that we've picked up on. So we're running a series of workshops that develop that, starting with selling art. Like I say, a lot of students are interested in selling art prints, for example, but selling in general. So a real focus on that.
It's really interesting. Thanks, Graeme. And I think leads back a little bit to kind of Rob's point there about, you know, things that you could do in terms of planning to sort of increase that business in ways that perhaps haven't been done before, and not just through the medium of social media. So yeah, really, really interesting to hear that.
Harvey Morton Digital offers a spectacular range of digital marketing services, including social media management, website design, and influencer marketing. Modern companies need smart solutions to their digital problems. And as the 2018 IPSI National Young Freelancer of the Year, Harvey knows great digital. With an excellent Trustpilot score. Get in touch with Harvey today at his website harveymorton.digital to take your online presence to the next level.
We're going to sort of come back to something that Harvey mentioned a little bit earlier about those kind of blurring of lines of work-life balance. And I think, Harvey, you mentioned to us that kind of dividing line, I guess, when your office and your workplace become one, perhaps becomes quite tricky then to manage, where you are at any one given point in time and what role you're currently in. And I guess, I suppose it's be interesting for us to sort of hear what impact you feel this might have had on self-employed business owners like yourself. And are there any things that you're doing to kind of mitigate against the impact of this in terms of it becoming all-encompassing?
So, for myself, I've been working with a business coach since October, and one of the reasons for that was because I've burnt myself out too many times, and I'm rubbish at giving myself any time off. So it was important for me to learn to kind of respect the balance between work and life, and set some working hours and make sure that I actually stick to that schedule. And with everyone working from home, I guess the temptation is to stretch those hours as work and life happen to be in the same space. And it's not that I'm not used to setting that limit now, but it's that I found with clients in particular that who are new to this form of working, it's been chaotic, and I've had calls, messages at all hours, phone calls and emails, WhatsApps, and clients used to be quite respectful of the boundaries I'd set. But I think with everyone working from home and every day feeling like the same in lockdown, the lines have started to blur. So I've had to become really strict and try and not reply to people if it's outside of my normal hours, because I've found that once you do start engaging in a conversation after hours with just one client, then it quickly all spirals out of control, because people will just presume that you're free all the time. So I've been trying to kind of have laptop free days and just hide the laptop away at the weekend, so it feels like I'm in a bit of a different space. But it is really difficult, and it's I guess it's difficult at the moment for business owners to have some discipline, but you need to kind of preserve your own sanity and that of the people that you're working with as well.
Yeah, I think there's some really good points there, Harvey. And, it's one of those things I think we've all probably experienced in terms of perhaps volunteering to take on extra projects, feeling as though we've got the extra time, but actually, realising, as you've said, that were we kind of normally at work, we probably wouldn't do that because, rightly, we'd be kind of compartmentalising and saving our time. I like the idea of hiding the laptop, though. I think you can buy these time lock cases where you put in 24 hours and it won't give it back to you until after that. So might be an extreme measure. Rob, would you like to come in on this one as well?
Yeah, so when I work, I'm normally quite hands-on in the kitchen, and I find like working on the computer, as I was saying, developing new dishes, doing my costings, designing new posters it's not as hands-on as me because it's all on a computer, it's all in front of me. So like, especially from home, I get really distracted if there's something else going on. So if I know there's a job to do that's a bit more hands-on, I'd prefer to dive in and do that than to do the sort of work I need to do on the computer. So I'll get distracted really easily instead of sort of being in a kitchen where I can just focus on what I need to do.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear about that environment, and I'm a little bit like that as well. I don't mind working from home, but for me, I really like being in a sort of physical space that feels different to my house. And maybe, I work across lots of different buildings at the university, so again, I feel that sense of place is really important. Graeme, just to come to you really quickly on this, you've obviously mentioned that you've got a new project, a new business that's starting soon, so you're obviously involved in something on the side as well as being very busy in your day-to-day job. How are you managing to kind of compartmentalise the time along with your personal life, and are you finding it fairly straightforward, or is it something that you've kind of had to work on over the past sort of few months?
It's a timely question, Chris, because my wife made it quite clear last night that she wasn't happy not seeing me most days. So I definitely need to sort that out. it's easy for me to separate my 9-to-5 job, if you like, even though it's not quite 9-to-5, with my personal projects, simply because I'm quite strict. And like I say, I've been working from home for a long time. So I find that quite straightforward to do. I think the challenge is I do work too much. So that does impact on people close to me because they just don't see me typically. And that extends to family as well, in terms of me maybe not putting in those phone calls. I do become quite a recluse. And certainly when I'm working hard to get something out there, I put pressure on myself to make that happen, simply because I don't like to let things slide. I like to address them head on. So I'm all out, really. I am a person of extreme, so it's all or nothing, really. That's just the way I am. But it definitely does impact on my personal life, but I don't necessarily see that straight away. Sometimes it takes other people to point that out. And upon reflection, that's quite hard. You know, I need to be more aware. So when I've got the pull of business and the pull of work, two things I absolutely love doing, I do find it hard to switch off. I don't want to switch off. That's the challenge. I don't want to switch off. But yeah, it's something I guess I've always struggled with to a point over the years. But I love what I do, and I am thankful that I do have tolerant people around me to cope with my ways.
I think that will really resonate with a lot of people. It certainly resonates with me. I think, you know, a number of us will feel the same, that, you know, we're passionate about what we do. Sometimes you kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and as you say, doesn't give you as much time for other people. But I think it's really, you know, honest of you to say that. And I think, yeah, again, you know, everyone is in quite a different situation, but I think your kind of particular sort of circumstances will probably resonate with a lot of people. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely, they resonate with me, Graeme. So yeah, I'm very much an all or nothing person. I'll go into something 110% and just block out everything else. So yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Okay, going on to the next discussion point. So we've got a lot of reports out at the moment from Nesta, McKinsey, Edge Foundation, regarding the importance of innovation and enterprise to the economic recovery of the UK, but also the need for investment. So what further steps do you think the government can take to ensure that small business owners feel supported and that inspiring self-employed freelancers, business owners feel empowered to follow this path as well? Rob, I'll come to yourself with this one first.
I think that clarity is something that the government need. It might not be as much on funding, but definitely some sort of guidelines to lay out what you're supposed to do, especially for hospitality at the minute. Like we've had no guidelines of, because I'm trying to help the pub I work at set back up as well and get going again. And we've had no guidelines as to 2 meters between tables, 1 meter between tables, the new procedures we have to do for health and safety, any of the new guidelines. We've had sort of none of that. It's sort of been put off and put off and put off. And when it's coming, because 4th is supposed to be the day we're opening back up, and there's still no guidelines as to how we're supposed to do things. So I think clarity is really important for small businesses, so they understand where they're going.
Yeah, definitely. Graeme, have you got anything to bring in to this? I'm guessing you feel quite passionate about this.
Yeah, so I was present at the Startup Britain launch with David Cameron in 2011. And SMEs at that time were very much in the limelight. That was the whole point of the drive. And that light went out and it needs turning back on. So I really would like to see the government raise the profile again of small businesses. I'd like to see them do more to connect businesses together. Business Link, for example, fell away. Certain resources dwindled, funding was cut. And I know that needed to happen, but I think the government needs to turn that light back on. And I'm really thankful that Sheffield City is amazing for the support that is available to anybody who wants to start a business, such as through Business Sheffield, who we in the enterprise team work with. And I'm really proud to be part of Sheffield Hallam, who do so much to support students develop not only businesses, but projects as well. So the whole enterprise spectrum in terms of skill development. But the government, I do feel, needs to do more to promote businesses and support them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would second that completely. I just think it's, it's the economy that we're wanting to kickstart again. We need to get going with. Self-employed freelancers, they need that support. They need that kind of foundation there to get them moving again. It's been so hard, especially for yourself, Rob, and other people, hospitality sector. I think, cafes, restaurants, it's just, it really is shocking at the moment. And it's hard to visualize how that sector is going to get on the ladder again and start moving. It's a real worry of mine. And it's so much a part of our culture. Going out for drinks, going out for meals, it's just really hard. It's going to change the way that I think the UK live in the near future. It's really like I say, heartbreaking.
Yeah, so as Rob and Graeme have already said, I think that there needs to be more clarity for small business owners and freelancers, but particularly for the government to stand by young people as well and guarantee that young people can access not just opportunities after education, but also ensuring that they are part of any solutions and service design going forward. Because I think that kind of anyone up to the age of 24 is going to be most impacted by whatever happens next.
Yeah, absolutely, Harvey. And I think, we've sort of had this kind of conversation before. I know Graeme is very passionate about this, so we'll sort of come to him on this as well. But my sort of experience in schools when I worked as a careers leader was that there often was a little bit of a disconnect between sort of business enterprise education and what kind of working life is actually like for someone self-employed or as a freelancer or as a business owner. And I think, it's something that's caused quite a bit of kind of consternation between the business community, as you said, young people that might want to access that support. I mean, what sort of message do you feel that we need to be sharing with young people regarding sort of enterprise and entrepreneurialism that maybe we're not doing already? And have you kind of seen any examples, I guess, as you mentioned a minute ago, from the government or large-scale organisations that you feel are effective in terms of showing young people what sort of enterprise business ownership is really like and kind of, I guess, inspiring people to get into that?
So I think that people, particularly going on previous experience being in school and even in sixth form, people still think that being self-employed is quite a relaxed way of life, and that's far from the case. I think that schools can often sugarcoat what being self-employed is like, but also most schools don't even talk about it at all, or they might present it in a negative light. I know that the careers advice I had at school, because I set up my business through a school enterprise competition, even with all the success I'd had with that, the advice always turned back to, self-employed is an option, but how about this more stable option? And that's always a problem I had. It was like self-employment didn't exist. It was only when I got to Hallam that I felt like I was supported with what I actually wanted to do from the enterprise team and the careers team. But also within my course. But I'm an ambassador for Youth Employment UK and also the Diana Award charity as well. And they've got fantastic coronavirus support hubs, particularly the one that Youth Employment UK are offering. It's full of resources around what young people should do, and if they want to go into self-employment, there's lots of advice there, so I definitely recommend that.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey. There's some really useful kind of, I suppose, sort of reflections there, and certainly, I think most of us would agree. You're absolutely right. Youth Employment UK have got some brilliant stuff on their hub at the moment, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning at this point. The Career Development Institute and a number of career professionals across the UK are really lobbying at the moment for a very youth-focused, essentially, response from the government in terms of kind of securing future opportunities for young people. But as you've said, is also that improvement is going to have to come through things like innovation, entrepreneurship as well. And I think there will be a lot of people who probably feel very similarly to you that in school maybe they've not had that support. And I think actually a lot of that can be down to the funding and the lack of support that Careers Advice and Guidance has, without us banging our own drum too much. So I think some really interesting reflections to mention there. Graeme, I know you're really keen to come in on this point. This is something you've got quite a bit of experience with yourself.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I've been working in enterprise education for 16 years now. And I really think we need to be more realistic with students. We need to be honest with them. We need to focus on raising aspirations, but we've got to be encouraging students to be realistic, and we need to give honest feedback. If we're talking about developing a business, for example, in the context of enterprise, it has to be achievable and it has to be in context. So if it is about thinking of anything and that's the exercise and we're just getting students to really dream big, that's fine, and there's a definite need to do that. But if we're talking about students really running a business or a project, it has to be achievable. Can they do that? So I think there is a lack of focus on being realistic with students and providing honest feedback. And I think a lot of young people, based on my experience, they expect Instagram fame overnight, and it's not happening tonight, and nothing good comes easy. It is hard work, like we've said, and certainly like what Harvey's pointed out there, you know, working for yourself is hard work. Nothing good comes easy. Personal finance, for example. So I was involved in the development of personal finance education a number of years ago. And that to me is so important, because how can a young person even begin to understand business finance if they can't understand their own personal finances? You know, a lot of them can't understand credits. They don't know the number of hours needed to work to buy something. It's easy to buy something on Amazon now, for example, and it's delivered the next day. But how many hours does somebody need to work to actually be able to afford to pay for that? And these are the things that I feel we really need to address with young people. So another point is, they say that there's no such thing as a bad idea. Well, a lot of businesses fail. And why is that? Maybe their idea was bad. There are different definitions of bad. The idea itself might be bad. It could be the wrong market, the wrong brand, the wrong approach. But I think there's too much, oh yeah, that's a great idea, when really, no, it's not great. It's terrible. It's a terrible idea. You know, don't do that. And this is why. Let's be honest. Let's explain. Because if young people are going into the world thinking their ideas are great, when in reality they're never going to achieve success in the way they expect, that's just not going to work. And I've seen many bad ideas shouted out of a boardroom. In real life, if you've got a bad idea, you'll be told it's a bad idea. You won't want to go to your boss with a bad idea. So I think that's important. And it's not just about business, like I've said, it's about developing the project, which is what we do within the enterprise team at Sheffield Hallam. We focus equally on students developing projects. So it's about business and skill development, but inspiring young people to do something, anything, just something. So it could be a business, a project, and the skills and attributes that they develop as a result of engaging in something is where it's at. That's what it's about. And it's important to look at what motivates them. So ask them, you know, what drives you? What is it that you're interested in doing? And certainly that's something we do with our students. We try our best to understand their motivations, their drivers, so we can best support them. And I think it's difficult because these are the questions that we often don't ask ourselves, let alone other people. So often it's alien for us to think in this way, for somebody to ask us, hey, what is it that really motivates you? Often you catch people off guard because it's a question they've never been asked before and they've never thought about. So I think we need to really dig deep into the individual to find out what it is they want to do. We've got to really find that spark. And enterprise is about taking action. It's about selling yourself. So I mentioned sales earlier. Absolutely. You know, it's about selling yourself, sell your idea, get someone else interested, whether that's to buy from you or certainly initially to help you, to be involved. I just don't think there's enough focus on sales, especially in the context of business.
Yeah, thanks for that, Graeme. I think, a lot of stuff there that will resonate with quite a lot of people who've maybe been involved in enterprise or people, in fact, who've not had that experience, perhaps going through education. And I think one of the points that you make, which is very, very valid, is that actually a number of us won't have experienced that before. So, I mean, until I was a sole trader, I had very little knowledge of anything to do with self-employment. So I've gone through most of my career and life to date without really touching it. So I think it's a really important point to mention. Rob, we'll just come through to you finally on this one. Has kind of what Harvey and Graeme mentioned been sort of reflective of the experiences you've had in education in terms of enterprise, or have you had a slightly different experience from that side of things?
Yeah, I think what Harvey and Graeme have been saying is pretty spot on. Like, I went through school and through catering college always saying, I want to run my own business, I want to own my own restaurant. And until I went to Sheffield Hallam, sort of none of the skills or what you need, the information even of what you need to run a business hasn't really been given to me through school or college, not until I came to Sheffield. And then sort of doing the entrepreneurship scheme, maybe get a bit more told on, or a bit more information on like how many small businesses do actually shut down within the first few years, sort of stressing the point of how much hard work it is and how much of your time and effort you've got to put into it to sort of get any rewards out of it. I think that's important stuff to know.
Really interesting, Rob. I mean, I was going to just follow up on Graeme's point really about when you spoke about realism and how we inject that into enterprise education. So you've spoken quite a lot about, some business ideas just aren't good and that they'll never float. But how would you see us injecting that amount of realism within enterprise education?
So I would say it's about explaining through very positive feedback why that may not be realistic. Some ideas may obviously be not realistic. It might not be achievable. Has that person actually thought about how their skill set can match that idea? Is it something that they can actually achieve? Is it sustainable? Is it something that they've got an appetite for? Can they break through all the barriers? There's a lot of business acumen that they need to understand, but that will come naturally. And obviously that's a big focus in education. It's business acumen. But I think it really starts with just talking through the idea and getting the student to think about all of the angles. So the young person needs to understand that there are certain rules, if you like, within business or any idea development process that they need to follow for their idea to be realistic, to be achievable. So what does it mean for something to be realistic, something to be achievable? Well, that process needs to be explored. Is that something that that person can realistically do? Have they thought about the ins and outs? So that's a process that needs to really evolve. And yes, there's a lot of business acumen, there's a lot of angles there in terms of business, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And I think it's easy to allow a young person to come up with an idea. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then move straight into the business side of things. But that can get really heavy really quick. So let's just take some time and really look at this idea. Let's just put that idea on the table and look at it. Okay, so that's your idea. Let's just think about that for a moment, but not a quick moment. Let's sleep on it. Let's take some time to really look at that. And is that something that you can really make work? Do you want it to work? Because it's okay, somebody being able to make it work, but if they don't want it to work, if they don't really have an appetite for it to work, then it's just not going to. And they need that support behind them as well. You need the right people behind them, because if that person giving them feedback is not connected into the enterprise scene, then it's really not going to be something that is going to be meaningful. That process won't be meaningful. And it's easy to say, well, who are you to say my idea won't work? So we've got to be very careful. But like I said, there are certain rules that apply in terms of idea generation. And I think we need to really look into that, because a lot of people are coming up with ideas, and yeah, it's great that they're coming up with ideas. I'm all for that. Think big, dream big. Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't stifle that. Never stifle that. It's about raising aspirations, but let's bring it down to a level where it becomes realistic, because if it becomes realistic, it becomes achievable. And if it can be achieved, then that's where the motivation is. That's where the student can start making progress can start selling to the point where students are making money from a business that's going to work.
That's great, Graeme. And I think that, something you alluded to earlier, which actually we've not kind of covered in as much detail, is I think sometimes that language of enterprise, we've talked a lot about, self-employment and business owners, but of course, everything that you've just mentioned there is equally valuable for somebody working in a full-time salaried job for a company. And perhaps sometimes there is this worry, I think, from our perspective, from a careers perspective, that enterprise and kind of careers almost get pushed apart. When in fact, actually, as you've mentioned, those core skills of entrepreneurialism and enterprise are equally valid, whatever you're doing, and will really add value to an individual skill set. So, yeah, I think everything you've mentioned there could equally be applied to people going directly into kind of full-time permanent roles or temporary roles, part-time roles. So really, really interesting reflections from everybody there. If you're interested in finding out more about the work of the Sheffield Hallam University Enterprise team, please check out the full range of services that they offer on the Careers Connect website at careersconnect.shu.ac.uk. Or alternatively, you can email the team on enterprise@shu.ac.uk.
Yeah, absolutely. I just second what Graeme's been saying. I mean, I'm coming at this from an ex-business studies teacher point of view, and I do think that whether you're starting your own business or you're working for somebody else's business, that fundamental understanding of how a business operates is absolutely vital to understand your role within that business and how you're contributing to that business and the future success of that business as well. And understanding the language, the acumen, cash flow, market advertising, how it's growing and evolving is absolutely key. And I do think, just having this amount of enterprise support at university level, brilliant, that's absolutely great, but it needs to be sooner. It needs to be at secondary school level, definitely at college level if it's not already, and really kind of hammered home, because there's so many opportunities now where people can start their own business in anything, as we've got two great examples here. And every subject you study, you could then take it and progress and have your own business. But without that knowledge, I speak to so many creative studies students, and they've got businesses brewing inside them. I can see it, but the understanding of how to manage cash flow, just as one example, no clue about. And it's something that could be injected, I think, within every degree at every level. I think just a 20 credit module, get it in there, job done. That's it. Brilliant insights, great. Thank you, everybody. Just a final discussion point there. So we've kind of mentioned this a bit already. We've already given kind of some tips and advice, but I just wondered if anyone does have any kind of other tips or advice for aspiring or current self-employed individuals, small business owners or freelancers in terms of navigating their way during this uncertain COVID-19 world. Harvey, I'll come to yourself with this one first.
So my top tip would be don't let what's happening at the moment put you off starting a business. To echo what Graeme said earlier, just go for it and give it a try, because even if it doesn't work out, you'll gain so much just from trying out a business idea or running a business for a period of time, whether that's a short period of time or whether you run it for a few years. So there's so many skills to be gained just from giving something a go. And if you do try something and it doesn't work out, at least you can say that you tried it. Absolutely. Key message there. It's the pandemic, it's not you. That's the key thing at the moment that I'm holding on to. Rob, yourself, have you got anything to input to this? Any tips, advice?
Yeah, definitely stay motivated. There's always something you can be doing, isn't there? Even if it's not exactly what you were planning, there's always something, either planning forwards, developing stuff, making sure you're ready. There's always something you can be getting on with.
Absolutely.
So don't get demotivated.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just taking a break every now and again is good to kind of get momentum and creativity going again. If you step back from it, see it in a new light, and then you come back to it again, and that helps motivation, definitely. Graeme, I'll just come to yourself. So, as we've kind of said, the enterprise team at Hallam offers an incredible amount of support for students and graduates. Just wondering if you can shed a bit more light on that and just highlight the support that we do offer them in a bit more detail.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I'm really pleased to be part of the elite enterprise team at Sheffield Hallam, and a university that focuses so strongly on enterprise skill development across both business and project ventures, course related or not. we essentially offer multiple enterprise-based sandwich year placements. So we have work for yourself sandwich year placement, pop-up shop and event sandwich year placement, the Hallam Enterprise magazine sandwich year placement, and a new 24-week sandwich year placement, which focuses on students addressing social projects in teams. So on sandwich year placements alone, there's a lot of activity there, but also we offer one-to-one support. We offer group support as well, workshops, a whole range of different workshops. And yes, we have a pop-up shop on Howard Street. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I honestly think that it's the best example you will find of how to do it right in terms of enterprise education. So if anybody is interested in developing an idea, course related or not, business related or not, the Hallam Enterprise team is the team that you need to contact, and we can help you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graeme. Objective and unbiased assessment of the enterprise team there.
100%. 100%. I also would like to mention, if I could, that we fully support graduates as well. And when we are back in the building, we are based in Aspect Court on floor 6, and that is known as the iLab. It's a magical place where amazing things happen. And if you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, don't hold back, crack on, make progress and engage with us, and we can help you get there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graeme. It is a very cool workspace. Anyone from the careers community that knows John Maiden of Panjango, he's been based there up until the pandemic, and it is a very, very cool working space. So just before we finish, guys, I want to say a huge thank you for all the contributions today. It's been a really, really interesting discussion on enterprise and the potential future of, you know, how that can be funded or invested in better moving forward. Bookends our Gloom Busters, which is our top of the pods section. Probably going to get in trouble for the trademark there. And it's just really to kind of get an idea of some of the podcasts that maybe you guys are listening to at the moment that you might be happy to share with our listeners, anyone who's listening to the podcast at home. So Rob, we'll come to you first on this. Doesn't matter if you don't have one. Any podcasts that you're listening to, or anything you could recommend for our listeners?
Freddie Flintoff's got quite a good one. That's quite funny. I've listened to a few of them, but I've only just started like recently listening to them. So that's quite funny, yeah.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I think we were talking the other day saying quite a lot of the sports ones are getting a lot of airtime, particularly Peter Crouch podcast. But yeah, definitely have a listen to that one. Harvey, any podcasts in particular you'd recommend at the moment?
Yeah, so Control Alt Delete by Emma Gannon is a really good business podcast covering lots of different business issues and work-life balance stuff. And then also Fern Cotton's Happy Place is a really inspiring podcast to listen to as well.
Fantastic. No, Helen's a big fan of the Fern Cotton Happy Place, so you'd be pleased to hear that one coming up. Graeme, finally, last word on this one. Any podcast recommendations for our listeners before we finish?
So the only podcast I listen to at the moment is Ted Vieira's Photography Matters podcast. So I listen to Ted late at night and it sends me off to sleep, not least because his voice is the coolest voice you will ever hear. So Ted Vieira, Photography Matters podcast. Great insights into photography, especially during these challenging times.
Brilliant, that's great. Thank you, Graeme. And you'll now have 2 podcasts in rotation, hopefully, on your roster now that you've recorded this with us. So thank you very much to everybody again. Brilliant contributions today. Hopefully furthering the debate a little bit around enterprise, business and innovation. And if anyone listening at home has got any questions regarding any of the topics we've covered today, please do get in touch with Helen and I. We'd be very keen to do more episodes around enterprise. So do keep in touch. But thanks to all our guests for joining us today, and have a great day.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for having me. Good.
Bye.
If you've been interested in anything that we've talked about on today's podcast, do get in touch with us via the comment threads on the podcast link, wherever you're listening. We'll be tuning in again next week with a guest soon to be announced. And each week when we announce the guest, we'll be giving you a chance to put questions to the special guest in advance of the podcast. Thanks for tuning in and listening to us here on The New Normal.